We're the Hydradenitis Super Divas. If you've got HS, you'll want to meet us. It's not your fault, put the shame to a halt. HS divas know how to have a ball. The Hydradenitis Super Divas. Put the shame to a halt, cause it's not your fault.
Hey guys, it's Brinley with the Hydradenitis Super Divas. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Season 2. Just a heads up, if you are watching on YouTube, you will not see any video of the hosts. Unfortunately, the recording was stuck on time-lapse, which is not super helpful. So we do have all of the video of the guest who was on Zoom. That's perfect. If you're not watching on YouTube, this has zero bearing on you at all. Everything will still run just as it should. So just a heads up that, again, we won't have any video of the host, but we hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Hydradenitis Super Divas. We are here today with Sid and Mahala, and our guest on today's episode is Jillian Ondreyka. And Jillian is the founder of Embrace Health Nutrition. She is a dietitian, and are you a nutritionist too? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, our credential is a registered dietitian nutritionist. It's kind of redundant.
Perfect. I had no idea. I was like, oh, that's a good question. So Jillian also has HS. And so she has been a part of HS Connect since almost the very beginning of helping us with the nutrition aspect. And it's really nice to have someone who also has HS, knows the struggle, and can understand what it's like to live in our shoes, but also, is food a trigger? Is food not a trigger? All of that good stuff. So we're here today to talk with her a little bit more about that and what it looks like for the HS population. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I appreciate it. And I'm happy to be here. I love the name of the podcast, Super Divas. When I read that, I was like, that is so cool. So nice to meet you all. I had some information I wanted to share. So thanks for inviting me to your podcast.
Yes, please do.
And thanks for mentioning that. I also have HS. That's usually the first thing that people ask me in like the clarity calls, like when they want to work with me. And that's just like an instant connection, like, because they understand that I know what it's like to deal with it. And that kind of helps cut down a lot of the explanation. And so they're like, okay, she knows, what it's all about.
Yeah. And I think, the struggles that we go through, what it's like when you're telling someone like, well, just exercise, it's good for you. It's like, okay, but how do you do that with a flare? And knowing kind of all of that is really, really helpful. And I know you just had your first de-roofing, right?
Yes, I did.
And tell us about like that experience and how it's going for you since then.
Yeah, so I'd heard about it. I go to the HS conferences. I heard about de-roofing for a little while, but it's never really come up in my care yet. So I asked about it for this spot that I had on my thigh that was like recurring for like 2 months and it wasn't really healing and going away. And I asked about de-roofing. So they said it would be a good idea and they did it. And I was, of course, nervous beforehand. I actually texted Brinley a little bit and she helped me feel better. I read some HS Connect articles. And it was actually so much easier than I thought it was going to be. Like, it really wasn't bad at all. Much better than the previous surgery I've had. And so, that I was shocked how fast it healed up. I did the Aquaphor trick that I learned from Brinley at the HS or Spotlight HS earlier this year. And I think that really helped too with the wound healing. But from a nutrition standpoint, I did want to point out a couple things for some nutrients that can assist with healing. So the first thing is protein. A lot of people that I work with don't eat a lot of protein. So I always like to mention like, hey, protein's a pretty important macronutrient. Some American diets like are really heavy in meat and some people just kind of like eating carbs all day. So first thing is to think about adding protein.
Yeah, Sid's
I'm a carb loader over here.
Peanut M&M and
give me the pasta and the chicken strips.
Well, the peanuts have a little bit of protein and fat in there. So
there
you go. No, before I feel like you dive into a lot of ways that nutrients and nutrition helps your HS, I would love to just hear a little bit about your HS journey because I have no idea. So when did you start like developing HS? How long have you had it? And like, what are the areas you're dealing with?
Yeah, so I started developing it when I was a teenager. I didn't exactly track it, but I think I was maybe like 13, 14, like after puberty. And I started to get just like one kind of lump like in my groin area, like my thighs really. Just kind of one at a time, and they were like pretty spaced out, months apart. So I didn't ever seek care for it until I was in my early 20s. So I had it for like a little while. And then I started to get them kind of more frequently, and they were getting bigger and more painful. And very luckily, I happen to live in an area not far from Detroit. And Detroit, I mentioned Detroit because there's a big HS clinic there, and at Henry Ford. And one of my doctor that I saw in the city that I lived in at the time, Canton, she was trained at the HS clinic. So she kind of knew right away what it was, which kind of after I've been in the community and heard other people's stories, like I realized how lucky I was to have someone who knew what the heck HS is. So then we started some treatments. I think I did have some incision and drainages at first because it was like, back in the day a little bit, like before I knew that they were bad, before the doctors knew that they were bad. I don't think they were that helpful. I mean, they relieved the pressure, of course, but then the spot was still a problem. So the areas I usually get them are like my groin area, and my buttocks, and that's like the main location, those whole areas. So how I manage it, actually going back to my doctor, I was reflecting on this for a different HS related event that I was speaking for. And so I want to share this story too. So I can actually remember getting treated for my HS by this doctor. And we were in the exam room and she would ask me, like, hey, what's going on? Like, why are you here? And I would say something like, well, at first I noticed that this area hurts, like probably like on my thigh, like on a Tuesday, but then it was small. And then I noticed like after I went for a walk and was really sweaty, it was hot outside, like it got bigger and it hurt a lot more. And I distinctly remember her saying that she could always count on me for the play-by-play. And looking back, that was the start of my method for identifying the HS triggers.
Yeah.
And so a few years ago, actually with HS Connect, Brindley and Denise, we created a HS Flare journal kind of template to help other people identify like patterns and their activities or things going on that could be affecting their HS. And the whole point is to help identify it so that you can manage your HS.
That's beautiful.
And it's
so
available
awesome.
on the website under printables, I think. So we'll post a link to that too in the show notes as well.
Yes.
So were you already into nutrition, or were you already a nutritionist, or did you get more into that work because of your HS?
Great question. So I was already, well, at that time, I'm trying to remember, I was probably like when I first went to see her, I was in my dietetics program, like becoming a registered dietitian. So I was already interested in nutrition. So after a few years of realizing I had this, I'm not exactly sure how long, I decided like, hey, like I do have this training as an RD, so why don't I turn that to HS? And that's how I started the niche that I have in my private practice by helping others with HS nutrition.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. And Jillian does classes, I think usually like quarterly, right? And we usually promote them on HS Connect for people with HS, and they're very affordable. And she teaches a course 4 or 5 weeks, I think.
Yeah, there's 5 weeks. I can share the information so you can put it in the show notes. I cover the HS literature, the research that we have so far, some general nutrition, and microbiome usually kind of comes up a little bit. People are interested in that. So I have a section on that. And then I talk about like my services and the protocols that we can go through. So I can definitely share that.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think you've had quite a few people that have gone through that and have had really good success. And it kind of just goes more in depth into, how nutrition plays a role in our HS and all of that good stuff. So if you're interested in that, we'll post all that info in the show notes too. So
yeah, I have the HS course recorded, so that's available for purchase. And then I do try to do them, quarterly. I need to figure out my timing for the next one, so I'll let you know.
It may not be till January, sis, because all of a sudden it's going to be October, then November,
Yeah,
and
I know.
December. I feel like the rest of the year is
already
gone.
It's
booked
gone.
up, yeah.
It's gone.
I know, it's already gone. Yeah, we're so busy. That's a good point. I don't know if it'll end up being the fall. It'll probably be like 2024.
Yeah.
But I did want to offer a discount to the community, that your listeners. So
Oh, that's
I think
beautiful.
a $10 discount on the live course or the recording. And what I ideally like people to do is to listen or participate in the course first, like before doing like my program, the LEAP program, which I can talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
Because that way you kind of like get all the information, and I can't like tell everyone that in our visits because we only have limited time.
Yeah.
So I'm like, do the course, do the recording, so you like have all the other info. And there's a discount when you do the course first on the LEAP program. So you
Yeah,
get that
talk
as well.
about the LEAP program, because it's fascinating.
Yes. So the LEAP program stands for Lifestyle Eating and Performance. And this is the eating protocol based on a food sensitivity test. It's called the MRT, Mediator Release Test. And I have information, like little cheat sheets I can give you guys too for the show notes.
Perfect.
So this is the main package I've been offering for people with HS, and it has been working out really well. So I like to call this the best like personalized anti-inflammatory eating program, because it's based on your own results, your own blood results. So food sensitivities can make a person feel sick because the immune system reacts to foods and causes the release of chemicals called mediators. And it gets kind of like complicated and confusing, but basically those are different things that cause problems in your body. So it could be something like histamine, prostaglandins, cytokines, which cytokines has kind of been coming up in like more common language lately with like COVID over the past few years. And so basically your white blood cells release these chemicals called mediators. And then those mediators go all throughout your body, and they cause things like inflammation, pain, and other symptoms that we associate with food sensitivities. So it's been brought up that food intolerance could be linked to HS or could help us understand it. And the MRT is actually able to account for a wider range of reactions than IgG testing. And so you might hear of other food sensitivity tests. So that's why I mentioned that right now. And I think the MRT is the best, the most reliable and sensitive or accurate food sensitivity test, which is why I use it in my practice.
By the way, side note on here, Dr. Resnick mentioned you when we talked with him in his episode, and that he refers his HS patients to you.
Oh, awesome.
He didn't call you out by name, but I knew who you were. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, Jillian, yeah, we know her. She'll be on. So yeah, he recommends this as well to his patients and refers them to you. So
yes, I love Dr. Resnick. We do have a great referral relationship. I've actually created materials specifically for him, and yeah, not to go into too many details, but he's in Florida, his practices, and that's where the MRT lab is. It's in and I'm forgetting the name, but it might be around Miami or Riviera. And so when like we collaborate, like he is actually already has a lab account with them, so he can order the test too. So we have an arrangement where if he doesn't order it, I order it, and then we kind of like figure things out. So that's really nice.
Okay, so step one would be taking this MRT, correct? Am I saying it right? MRT.
well, taking the course first.
Okay, taking the course, possibly
Yes.
taking this test, and then what would be the
That's right.
next steps with you and just learning what helps and what doesn't help our body?
Yeah, so the whole program is about 45 to 60 days, the LEAP program, and it comes with multiple appointments. So the first one is usually like an hour, hour and a half, because there is a lot to talk about with the protocol. And then 3 follow-up appointments that are around day 10 to 14, day 30, and day 45. And basically the protocol, what it is the MRT will tell us how your blood's immune cells are responding to different foods, and it ranks the reaction from kind of like, let's say like 0.1 to 2, and then like beyond that. So there's like a number associated with it. And the foods that are lower numbers are safe to eat because your body isn't releasing any chemicals when it put in contact with it. Like they put like your blood with like a little bit of broccoli or the broccoli cell like in a test tube, and they do that times 176 foods and food chemicals. So the whole premise is that we're eating the safe foods, and so this gives your immune system like a chance to calm down and inflammation to start to reduce. And you're eating only like the MRT tested safe foods and fluids and ingredients for the duration of the program. And basically, if it's not on your foods list, don't eat it, because it could be if you aren't keeping track of all the ingredients and you eat something that's not on the plan, it could be something that causes a problem or inflammation in your body. And then like all the work that you've done is kind of like not a race, but like you might have a symptom or you might have a problem, then you kind of have to backtrack a little bit. So it's kind of like in your best interest to just stick to the safe foods and fluids for the time of the period, so you can see how your body is reacting to everything. Another main part is keeping a food symptom journal, so that you can make those connections. And a common question I get is about how delayed a reaction can be. So food sensitivities are thought of as adverse food reactions that are more delayed than like if you had a food allergy, you would immediately like your throat would start to close up, your like tongue might be swelling or throat swelling, and you would have trouble breathing like right away. So obviously food sensitivities do not have that effect. And so you could have symptoms that are really wide ranging. So for HS, a lot of times what my clients are tracking are like increased drainage or less drainage, and like feeling that things are less swollen, or tracking like the inflammation of their HS too. And then other symptoms, I've had people talk about their energy levels, like brain fog, like their mental clarity, and then GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, constipation, diarrhea, like bloating, like all sorts of things. And so that's why when you're tracking it, you can really connect like what foods are causing what. And there's also the issue of how much foods, because you might be able to tolerate like small amounts of different foods and not have a symptom, but then past a certain threshold, you might have a symptom.
That's
So
really
that's why
interesting.
yeah.
So once you find out kind of like what foods you should stay away from, are you encouraging people to kind of like stay away from them for life, or what does that look like? I'm like, because if you tell me I have to give up chocolate, Jillian, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if we could even be friends after that.
Right. So no, my food philosophy I think is very inclusive. So I myself like to enjoy certain foods that I know cause me problems with my HS at certain times. So I just encourage people, like, knowledge is power. So I like doing the program with them. They can identify the foods that are problematic, and then how you choose to go forward from there. What you choose to eat or not eat is up to you. And I definitely, like, if it feeds your soul to like eat the chocolate or eat the ice cream at a birthday party, like I totally do that. Like, go for it, knowing that it might, you might have a flare
Some
from there.
problems, yeah.
And also it's kind of cumulative. So like if you know you're going to be going to a party, maybe cut down on other things that could trigger your HS, like not exercising that day, trying not to get too hot and sweaty, or like walking around where there's friction, trying to think of other things that could be feeding into the HS flares. So that way you're kind of leaving your body like more room or more bandwidth to handle like a food trigger.
That's a
Did
big
I explain that all
perspective
right?
switch.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
really amazing. It's kind of like giving yourself permission to like, you don't always have to do the most. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like pivoting sometimes your day, like I have a birthday party next Saturday. Okay, I'm gonna kind of try not to do the most on Thursday and Friday so I could
Yeah.
enjoy myself.
Yeah.
That's really good
But
way
I
to
think
put it.
something we forget is HS for the most part is made up of so many factors. So I think
Mhm.
even with food, if you want to eat the chocolate, let's not trigger ourselves in the other ways that possibly could.
Right, like going to the
Yeah,
gym.
yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
like giving yourself permission. Brinley has to remind me of this all the time. It's like, but what if you don't? Like, oh, you need to do this today. It's like, but what if you don't? Like, what will happen if you just take the time and
Yeah.
freaking relax today and eat the damn candy bar? Like, we put so much pressure on ourselves, and I think I do it to myself
Mhm.
all the time, to where now the anxiety and the stress is
Yeah.
triggering me versus me just
Yes.
enjoying myself and not feeling the guilt. So that's a really good perspective.
And then you talk so much about self-care. I love how much you do. And I feel like that can also just impact if you're doing self-care, it's going to help with the other. It's like such a
Yeah.
circle, it's such a circle. Everything's connected. So
It's amazing. I learned so much this
I know.
weekend. I'm like, oh my
I know.
God.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
and then let's talk about like wound care and what you can do like nutrition wise for wound care. I know you had mentioned in
Mhm.
text we were talking that you were taking collagen like for helping your
Yeah.
de-roofing procedure heal, and how does that play a role? And like, is it something you had mentioned protein, which I know is a huge thing. Like we have an article on protein
Yes.
after surgery, especially
Awesome.
instead of carb loading, which I'm a
Mhm.
I'm saying.
balance of the macronutrients.
No,
You can have
yeah.
it all. Yeah.
You know, talking about that and wound care it's something we never consider really is the nutrition part of that.
Yeah. So collagen is like a type of protein. It can get a little confusing. So collagen is basically what provides structure for skin. So that's really important for us with HS, muscles, bones, and all our connective tissues. And so collagen, like supplements, are not considered like a complete protein. So like as a dietitian, I recommend eating enough protein, like getting adequate protein from sources like meat, fish, beans, lentils, milk products, eggs, nuts and seeds, and like nut butters. So those are the list of protein foods. It is kind of limited, so trying to remember to eat those throughout the day. And collagen kind of goes on top of that requirement. It shouldn't count towards your protein, goals, because it's not a complete protein. And complete means it has all the essential amino acids. So collagen just is kind of an extra helper for like wound healing, in my opinion. I've kind of been reading up on it, studying it in the last few years. And so when I had this de-roofing, I was like, I'm going to take my collagen supplements. And I put them in my smoothies. I usually do a smoothie for breakfast because I commute to work. And that I can't really pinpoint like if that was what was helpful or not, or like what part of the plan was the most contributing, but I was surprised at how fast my skin healed up. I was expecting like 2 weeks of like having it slowly close, and it was like mostly closed by like day 4 or 5, and I was like, what is happening? Like, did it work right? Like, are you closing the right way? And then by like the 7-day mark, like it was all the way closed, and then now it's just kind of healing from there. But I was so surprised at how fast that was healing up.
And what collagen supplement are you using, like a powder or?
Yes, they're powder. And also your body itself can make collagen, and it does, as long as like you
It
get it
stops
from
at a certain
protein.
age though, right? We stop
It
producing
does.
collagen naturally at a certain age.
Yeah, it does start to decline, I think, in like your, I don't know,
I used to
mid-30s or
drink
maybe
some as
40s.
well. I drank like
Yeah.
a drink, and it was like had all 5 different types of collagen that like feed your muscle, the heart, joint, skin. And it was I felt like it helped me in that time. But yeah, it was pretty good. Collagen.
What foods do we know can
Yeah.
help with fatigue or maybe even energy, whichever way you would translate that in nutrition?
Yes, that's a good question. I would say the main thing is I'm really big about balancing your macronutrients. So when I say that, I mean having protein foods with your carbohydrates. That is going to really help blood sugar control and help reduce your risk of like developing type 2 diabetes, and help avoid like your dips and spikes in blood sugar. And so that is what is tied, or can be tied in some people, to what they're eating and to like feeling what do they call it, like kind of really sleepy after eating a lot of carbs. Yeah.
Tryptophan-y.
Yeah. So making sure to have protein with the carbs will kind of combat that. And then as far as like energy, like getting back to that, nutrition is so complex, and I couldn't even begin to get into everything today, but like the amount of metabolic reactions that are going on in your body, like you really do need to have a lot of micronutrients at one time to fully function or to optimally function. So making sure to have like a wide variety of fruits and vegetables, because they're all made up of different things, then you get a variety there. Maybe having like kind of as an insurance policy, like some kind of vitamins and mineral supplement. I think that can really help, just eating well throughout the day, like evenly spaced meals and snacks, like not getting like super hungry and where you're like, really crashing your blood sugar. And so kind of like controlled eating throughout the day, and like all the fruits and vegetables, like different food groups.
Okay.
That would help.
Very
just
helpful.
Basic general nutrition.
That is helpful.
Okay,
What do
very
you think about intermittent fasting? Because this was something we had asked another guest too. It was like curious.
Yeah, that is definitely a hot topic. I talk about it in my course a little bit because people ask me about it. Personally, it's not something that I have done. Like, I'm someone who like, I want to eat. Like, if you tell me not to eat and I start to try to fast, I'm going to be hungry and miserable. And so like personally, like it doesn't work for me. But I looked at the, research, and I kind of know about it. So If you are gonna fast, I do recommend doing like the prolonged nightly fast. So like your eating window is like you have breakfast and then you eat till like a certain time and have dinner like
I'm just
early,
so
and then
glad
you
you guys
have like
agree.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, they
Really?
agreed. It's always refreshing when more than one person says
I'm
it.
like, okay, it must be true.
Check mark.
Yeah.
A lot of, I think the most common fasting right now, especially one that's trending, is the 12 to 8. You eat between 12 p.m. and 8 p.m. And then it's like you kind of like don't eat breakfast and you're shutting
Mhm.
shit down at 8 p.m., which for a lot of people, it makes sense, right? You could skip breakfast. But I think we're also like, I can tell now that because I'm pregnant, like my body literally like needs fuel in the morning. Like I'm getting nauseous now. Like I could
Mhm.
feel it like shutting down by noon. And I'm like, crap, like I got to switch from like just regular Sydney mode to pregnant Sydney mode to like remind myself to eat. But it's also like, even if I wasn't just thinking about being pregnant, like just listen to your body. Cause like
Yes.
if you're hungry in the morning, just eat and maybe stop eating
Yes.
a little bit earlier. So I think that's, thank you for agreeing with the other girl without even knowing you
Yeah,
were going to agree with
and
her.
that's like
I'm like, okay,
circadian
we can eat
rhythms.
breakfast. We're safe.
Yeah, and I love that. Listen to your body. Eat when you're hungry and don't when you're full. Like
Yeah.
we can all tune into
And with
our
your kids too, I
cycle.
think I have had such a shift with my children. I mean, of course, if you're not even going to try, like, what are you doing? But like my daughter, she'll finish majority of her plate and she'll be like, Mom, I'm full. Versus when I was growing up, like you needed to clear your plate or there was no drink, there was nothing to drink, and there was no dessert. You know what I mean? But I have learned to break that stigma in my household of like, okay, if you've eaten like 50 to 75% of your food and you say you're full, like I'm not gonna argue with you. Like that's your right, it's your body and you're listening. So
Yeah.
And as soon as you put that
Love
plate,
that.
the food in the trash can, and then come ask me for a snack, we're gonna have to
we're
renegotiate.
You're not hungry. No.
Dang, kids.
Yeah, congratulations on your pregnancy.
Thank you.
That's exciting. My other specialty besides HS nutrition is actually working with pregnant women and infant feeding and child feeding. So what you just said was all like, I love to hear it. That's what we basically say to our clients at WIC. I work in WIC as well. Is yeah, this whole like trusting your child's appetite, letting them tell you when they're full, and teaching them from a young age to really like tune into their bodies and like learn their hunger and fullness.
Yeah. You work at WIC. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You want to know a game-changing thing you guys did for me as a parent? Showing me how much sugar was in juice and soda and Gatorade.
Cool.
You guys have the little Ziploc baggies with the amount of sugar that's in each thing of juice.
Yeah,
Like if you give your kid
definitely.
2 cups of this apple juice a day, this is how much sugar you're giving your kid. And that was such a perspective switch for me, even as an adult. Like, okay, well, how much sugar's in soda? And so now, like, before I go reach for that second soda of the day, I'm like, can you really afford to do this to your body? You know what I mean? So it's cool to see it in that light.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with that sugar, thinking about like if you have it by itself, then your blood sugar is going to really like go up from that because you're having to process it. If you have some protein with it, so I don't know, peanut butter or like what goes well with just juice, probably like more things than just like a protein, like probably a protein and some and like a fruit. But that protein will help level out how your body processes that. And instead of your blood sugar going like this, like really sharp, it'll be like a more even hill.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
I know it's really refreshing. Yeah, it's really refreshing how you're breaking down just even how your body processes stuff. So just that balance is key, you know. Even when you said just eating smaller meals throughout the day, you know, like I'm like, okay, you know, and I like meat, so I can do this.
Protein.
Yes, I can do it. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and they've made so much of that stuff like so more easily available. Like I sent my kids to Costco and I was like, okay, we need to get like the little chicken skewers or whatever, because it's just so easy to just grab and eat that protein. And then their little veggie packs that they have, the individual ones. I'm like, okay, that's makes my life easier because then I don't have to like do it myself and meal prep that way. So it is so much easier, I think, than it used to be to try to stay on the straight and narrow. Now if I could just stop drinking
coffee every day, all day.
I was gonna say soda, y'all, but okay.
But zero sugar though. She drinks zero sugar.
I know we got a coffee addict. We got a
soda and sugar. It's a problem. I have a question. Is there a test that people can take that shows them like, hey, listen, like your potassium's low, this is low, you need some vitamin B, you need some vitamin C. Like, is there something that you can say to your doctor, your primary care, when you go to your next visit and be like, hey, listen, I've just been feeling a little bit off. My HS has been kind of like a little bit crazy the last 6 months. What standardized tests can we see to see what levels are out of whack?
So there's layers to that question. So the first thing I'd say, most every doctor should have access to be able to order a vitamin D test and a zinc test. So I bring those two nutrients up because they are studied a little bit with HS nutrition, and people who had HS that had low levels of zinc and vitamin D had worse HS, like more severe symptoms, more, things going on. So in those studies, when they gave zinc or vitamin D supplements, the same thing happened, where in both cases their HS improved. So for any doctor that you go see, even if they're very like typical traditional like Western medicine, they should be able to order those tests for you, vitamin D and zinc.
And that's just a blood test, right? Can't they
those
detect
are
that?
blood tests.
In a blood test, you can usually get a panel that says a lot of the stuff.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and I know
I
started taking vitamin D in the morning after talking to you about it because it doesn't matter. So vitamin D we can get from the sun, right? Except for that even people who live in Hawaii and very sunny places are low on vitamin D.
Josh literally has low vitamin D. His doctor said multiple times.
So I just take a little pill in the morning, little capsule.
Well, yeah, probably for you, especially because you don't like to be exposed in the sun that much because of
and I was fascinated to learn that like it didn't matter where you lived, everyone was low on vitamin D.
Well, we also know that lack of vitamin D can contribute to depression and anxiety as well. Right. So it's like this full circle of mental health with HS and everything. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a whole nutrition connection with mental health too.
And you had mentioned taking it in the morning because I started taking it at night because I didn't fully listen to Jill. Or I forgot that part, not intentionally not listening to you. And I was taking it at night and I was like, dude, why am I having trouble sleeping?
She's all wide awake.
I was like, hey, I just started taking this vitamin D and I'm like having trouble sleeping. She's like, are you taking it in the morning? I will now.
but both Jill and the other girl we had on the podcast just mentioned the importance of like trying to eat healthy all around because it's just good for you in general. Trying to do some of these practices, even if we're not focusing so much on our HS, just our all around health is so good for us. And I'm like, okay, I gotta get my
sometimes I get in the point I'm like, I don't care if this sugar is about to flare my HS, but it's like I care if I gain 20 more pounds because I keep
and I think that's something we do with HS too. We get so hyper focused on the health aspect with our HS, but I think if we just looked at our overall wellness in general, this can help our energy, this can help us feel better, this can avoid type 2 diabetes. This can help with weight loss. Like there's so many, whatever factors affecting you, health. I mean, what did the other girl say? You are what you eat. I was like, damn, I know. Could y'all stop with that? My mom used to tell me that. I don't want to hear it no more.
I guess I want to be a green bean instead of a Coke Zero. But
beggars can't be choosing.
The other thing to answer your question about labs, so if you work with kind of more holistic or integrative nutrition practitioner like myself, or there's a bunch of other, holistic practitioners out there, we have access to order panels for micronutrients. So I don't think regular doctors really order from the labs that do whole panels, so checking all of your micronutrients. But I have access to a lab where I can do that. So if I guess we could put that in the show notes if we wanted.
Just keep finding my people, man. I'm like, okay,
Jillian, there's a way to look at all of it. And then see where you're low. And then how I like to use it is we'll do the panel first to identify like everything, to kind of like check it out, and then do targeted tests to recheck it. That's going to be cheaper if you just do one or two things. So whatever was low, we'll do some supplements, make some changes, and then like in 6 months from like their doctor, because usually like insurances might pay for certain tests, having them just test whatever was low to make sure that it's increased.
Okay, perfect. That's so cool. Look at you go.
It's super fascinating.
Is there anything else you want to let us know, Jillian?
We're willing students.
Yeah.
Right. You got any homework for us?
Circling back to some of the wound healing, other nutrients that are really well established as helping with wound healing are vitamin C and zinc. And actually, like as a registered dietitian, like in my training, like in the hospitals and in retirement homes, when someone has like a ulcer or bed sore or any kind of wound, we make sure to give them extra protein. So we already covered that. And then we give them vitamin C and zinc supplements too. And so vitamin C is in a lot of fruits and vegetables. Some examples are like broccoli and strawberries. And then zinc is going to be in a lot of meat. So if you're doing like meat already, like there's a lot of micronutrients in meat. So it's pretty healthy from that aspect. And then the protein as well. Zinc is also in some fortified grains. So our country has like decided to put certain nutrients that have to be fortified in grains and different products. So zinc is one of the things that's in like fortified grain products and like cereals. And then other protein sources like beans or legumes, lentils.
So if you were going to add a zinc supplement, what would you recommend? Like what dosage is kind of safe across the board for people to take?
Good question. So the levels, there's different levels you can take and there's different forms of it. So I like a form that's better absorbed by your body. It's called zinc picolinate. And you can start at like 20 milligrams. I think it comes in milligrams. I don't have a good brain for numbers, so I always have to like check my references and what I have written down. It might actually be on my website too. I think I have a page about like supplements. I might have thrown it on there. It's definitely covered in my course. So when you take zinc, you can think about the form, and then also making sure to take copper with it because they compete at the same like site. And so if there's too much zinc, like the copper just like can't absorb there because it's already bound to the site where it is able to be absorbed. So if you take zinc, also take copper in a smaller amount, like a 1-to-20 ratio. And the amount of zinc that they used in the studies for HS was much higher than our what we call like the recommended dietary allowance like for a day. So anytime I'm making a recommendation to go above that, like I think they use 90 milligrams of zinc gluconate. Gluconate is probably a less better absorbed form of it, but it's cheaper and widely available. So that's probably why they used it. It's like probably the normal one that nutrition nerds, like we know like the ins and outs, but other people are like, oh, there's zinc.
Yeah.
So the higher level so they went to 90 and I think the RDA is like 45 or something. So anytime we go above that, just professionally, I like to recommend like doing a zinc test every 6 months just to make sure we're not going like overboard. It's not too much zinc. It's probably going to be safe for most people, but just to be really on the safe side and to be clear on that, you can have your blood drawn every 6 months just to make sure it's at a good level.
Yeah.
And
go ahead, honey.
I have one more question about taking supplements. Like once you find out what you need to be taking, is it okay to take like in one sitting or should supplements be taken throughout the day? Like I'm someone who would prefer to like make a good smoothie with greens, bananas, whatever I need and just take them all in the morning versus I know some people who like to have them spread out. Is there a best way? Like if we're taking vitamin D, zinc? I mean, I'm hoping, but I don't know. I'm like, these are a lot of supplements we may need to end up taking. So is there a best way to do it?
Yes. It does depend on what you're taking and like what is absorbing together and what can be competing for absorption. So one thing I'll start with is protein. If you take more than 25 grams of protein at a time, your body won't be able to digest it all. So it's kind of useless to go above 25 because your body's not going to be able to process it. So like for protein, like you need to get it throughout the day in smaller amounts.
Okay.
Minerals, absolutely take with food, like the zinc, because that can upset your stomach. So I always recommend taking that with food.
Like it's literally happened to me and then I just don't take them ever again. I'm like,
oh. Take them halfway through dinner or halfway through a big meal and then it's mixed up with the food and then hopefully
okay.
So
Yeah, that's a
basically
good
she's
tip.
saying you can like be an older person and set out all your
I
vitamins.
shit with dinner. Oh my gosh. I'm my own CNA now.
Yeah.
Like,
I ask because I am someone, if I just see them all out there and I have to like keep taking them and buy, I can't do it.
so you
I'm
put
someone
them
that
in the smoothie? You don't like
my
use the
dad
smoothie
actually
to
does.
wash it
My
down?
dad does his vitamins in there. I can't do it, the taste, but I like to just drink it and
Oh.
knock it out for the day.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if that was
Yeah.
healthy. That's why I was asking. I was
That's
like, maybe I'm
okay.
doing too
Yeah.
much.
It depends on what it is, but for like a regular multivitamin, that should be fine. Like you can
Okay.
take it all at once, or you can take things throughout the day. It's really just whatever works.
Okay,
So,
perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
I have one last question, and it's mostly just your opinion because I don't even know why I didn't ask the other girl who was talking about food this in the last episode. But can we talk about what the health, like as a nutritionist? Did you see the documentary on Netflix? The What the
No, I
Health
didn't.
documentary?
Sorry.
Okay. Well, basically, no, they just talk a lot about like meat's not good for you. Like, look at all of the stuff that
Mhm.
they're doing on these farms, like all of the hormones and GMOs and things like
Yeah.
that. How eggs are super like the worst for inflammation and drives in your body. But then we get on like, no offense to you or anything that you said, and people
Mhm.
are like, you could eat eggs, you could still eat meat, you could do all of these things. And I'm like, wait, like the vegans and the vegetarians are out here like swooning because everybody's in this era right now
Mhm.
where they either think meat is okay and we can eat it, or like it's like the worst thing that we could ever be putting in our bodies. So what is your
Yeah.
opinion on that?
Nutrition is very polarizing, so and confusing, and I'm a dietitian. So it's like, yeah, I totally get it. And I'd say there's also different like layers of how strict you want to be too. And I have extra training in like integrative and functional nutrition, and I know like based on like grass-fed beef is going to be healthier for you for a variety of reasons. Probably they talk about that in the documentary if they're talking about those differences of like how they're grown and processed.
Yeah.
But like to me, like if someone like can't always afford to go 100% organic, get all the grass-fed beef, like because all that stuff can be expensive.
Yep.
Like I'm more for just getting those nutrients, period. And then like if you want to take the extra step, like if that's within your budget and something you want to do, you can go all organic and do like grass-fed beef and things like that. So I'm not saying I'm disagreeing with something like that. Well, there's different things that you said. So there's like different points, like plant-based, like vegan, versus like including meat. And there's different camps on that. I'm more in the camp of eating meat already, like what I said today. And that's just like kind of easier nutrition advice too, is like talk about the food
Once I
group.
saw a vegan in my comments talking about they still had HS, I was like, okay, that ship sailed.
Right.
Don't gotta suffer for that shit.
Yeah, because with vegans, you do have to make sure you're getting nutrients from, because if you aren't eating meat, like there's a lot of micronutrients that you're going to miss out on. And some people, and even like my fellow professionals that have gone plant-based and then had a little bit of meat, like find like a little bit of meat is helpful with like your brain clarity. And like I heard one practitioner talk about that. So I'm more in the camp of like having some meat. Maybe like not having a ton of red meat every day. Red meat can be inflammatory. But it's so a food isn't inherently good or bad or like,
Gonna kill you, or like it's
right.
not black and
So,
white, basically.
right.
I'll
It gets
stay away from the eggs
complicated.
though, because I heard
Yeah.
bad things about them from
Eggs
a
are
lot of
really good.
people.
Eggs are
Really?
really good for you. And there's choline in them, which is really good for brain health, especially for pregnancy and for babies.
So
Yeah, you can get choline from other foods though. It doesn't have to be eggs.
Well, so
I
my
hate eggs. I put them in my brownie mix though, Jillian.
Okay.
so Sid, my ex was a hardcore vegan chef and he was a nutritionist. But something he always said too, and he was hardcore vegan himself, but he said a lot of issues with like going to a vegan diet is then you're not getting like, just because you're vegan doesn't mean you're healthy.
Yeah.
So you might be okay not eating the meats, but now you're eating a lot of bread maybe
Yeah.
to fulfill
Mhm.
like your thing. And he was
Exactly.
like, oh, as hardcore vegan as he was like, I would rather people eat meat if they're going to get the right nutritions and not eat the crappy
Mhm.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like for him, sugar was way worse than meat, like what sugar did all around dairy was way worse. So I think what happens when you get so hyper focused on something though, you might still not
you're still
eat
missing
healthy,
something.
yeah.
You're overlooking.
So
Yeah.
it's just like really
Yeah.
about moderation, what works for you, what works for your budget. Another thing
Exactly.
is like a lot, he was more on vegetables. So like just eat more vegetables. I would rather you do that and eat the sugar if you
Yeah.
need the sugar, but just eat more vegetables, you
Yeah.
know? So I think it's just really about balance and what works for you, your budget, your morals, everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you're having the cake, have some protein with it, or
Yeah.
have like with the sweets, like the sugar, have some protein with it, and then you kind of help cancel out some of those effects. So
Yeah.
Do the peanuts and
Yeah.
the peanut M&Ms count as the protein?
yeah, and
Yeah,
chocolate
they
covered
do.
almonds, things like that. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
protein and fat are in
Music
nuts.
to
So
my
it's good.
ears.
She wants to take this
Yeah.
episode home for Josh
Yeah.
so that he can learn that her peanut M&Ms are acceptable.
There. Can you say it one more time? Would you like-
There you go.
Thank you
Yes,
so much.
chocolate
I
covered
feel so
nuts
good.
are healthy too,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
dark chocolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do not. It's
Antioxidants.
not that bad all the time. Dark chocolate, not all the time. You know, I could stomach it with some nuts in the middle.
when she's in a really bad way.
Yeah. Even a lot of these things, I used to hate dark chocolate. A lot of it is just training yourself to
Yeah,
eat
it's
it and get
actually
over it.
pretty
If
good.
we're being real. Yeah. I used to not be able to eat it. I started doing that bark. That
Yeah.
and I loved it.
It's good.
I had to train myself to do it, and now it's like dark chocolate's nothing. So
Yeah.
we're all on this together, y'all.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jill. We will make sure to add how we can contact you, find you, all of that. Thank you to Insight for sponsoring this episode. And yeah.
See you next time.
Yeah.
Hydradenitis super divas. If you've got HS, you'll want to meet us. It's not your fault. Put the shame to a halt. HS divas know how to have a ball. The hydradenitis super divas. Put the shame to a halt, 'cause it's not your fault.